Welcome back to High Heels to Happy Feels. I'm Natalie.
And I'm Stephanie. Before we start, I want to ask you to do something. I want you to look at the world this week. Really look at it. Last night, we had four astronauts that splashed down in the Pacific after traveling over 250,000 miles from Earth, and they traveled around the moon. It's the farthest any humans have ever gone.
Which is wild to even try to wrap your head around.
Right. And then this week we've got this crazy ceasefire and I mean, it's kind of a ceasefire, but it's barely struck in an active war in Iran, and our gas prices are all over $4 a gallon. And I've got diesel, so it's even higher.
Yeah, you feel that one immediately.
Uh-huh. And get me started on the freaking Epstein files, right? They've been releasing those partially forever. We had Melania come out and make her grandiose statement yesterday, and last week the AG, who's supposedly accountable for all of this, got fired.
Well, and sometimes, it just doesn't feel like we're getting any clarity. Like it just continues and continues and continues without any real thing.
I know. Add the icing on the cake because this impacts like our industry and people that we know. But Oracle laid off over 30,000 people in a freaking email.
Yeah.
I mean, tasteless, tacky, horrible, uh, cruel, and Hollywood's cutting. Tech is cutting. I mean, AI is simultaneously being blamed for these, and yet we all celebrate it as the freaking coming of something huge at the same time.
It's a lot to hold right now. There's just a lot of moving
Oh
parts.
my God. And what strikes me about all of it, every single story, nothing's actually new, right? Every single one is an old wound wearing a new beginning clothes, right? Because really we have all these new things happening all the time. We have different wars, we have different pieces, we have layoffs, we have economic growths or downsizes and so on. And it's just we're wearing new clothes. And it sounds like a bad fairy tale, right? You think of like the wolf in sheep's clothing.
Yeah. Nothing about this week feels surface level at all. And it made me realize I've been doing kind of those same things in my own life because we sit back and, review this, but I've been sitting down to work on something new, like something I actually want. And every time I go to do this work, this really quiet thought shows up, the who do you think you are moment. And I didn't really clock it at first, but then I was reading about the layoffs and I caught myself thinking, what if everything that I've worked towards ends in one email? What if it's just an email before it's over?
Yeah, that's not really about the layoffs, is it? It's bigger than that.
Yeah, no, no. And it's older than that. It's that feeling of not fully trusting that something gets to last. And here I am trying to start something new. And that's the part of me that shows up is that old wound of, are you sure that you deserve this?
Yeah. And that's the crazy thing I think about new beginnings because they're not really blank slates, right? They're more like you're standing at this new door. You have this entire history that's standing right behind you. So, I mean, we can take a look at this kind of in terms of I announced my retirement this week, right? And I put out a little video blurb and I'm very excited about it because I think everybody's known that that was coming or some variation of conversations that I've had in podcasts with you. I mean, obviously, my family has been aware. But this retirement from the corporate job, I mean, this is 3 decades that I've been in this industry. And this was a year in the making, at least, because I had all the thoughts of guilt that went with it. Um, how do I pay the bills? Do I have enough saved? What if this doesn't work? What if, right? What if? Don't let down my parents. Don't disappoint anybody. And this week, number one, I'm a big star watcher. I think everybody knows that about us, right? We're paying attention to those cycles. But the other part of it is I finally said, what about me? And I
Yeah.
that was huge.
And I think this is where people are really going to start to recognize themselves in this episode.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's what this episode is really all about, right? Is what are those wounds that we're bringing to to our new beginning. What does that look like? Because we've started that new relationship and already you do this and everybody does this at some point about something. But you're like, okay, this is too good to be true. Where's it going to fall apart?
Mm-hmm.
Before
Yep.
anything's gone wrong.
Yep.
We're automatically just going, okay, nope, too good. And we start almost manifesting the crap from it, right? Or maybe you got laid off and maybe recently, maybe it was years ago. And even now, when you start something new professionally, that lingers. And you start to say, okay, it's really good. When's the other shoe going to drop from all of this?
So true. Or even just watching the news right now and feeling exhausted. Not because it's new, but because it is the same. It's the same patterns, it's the same dynamics, same people protected, same people exposed. And what you're feeling isn't just anger, it's more like grief.
Oh, that is
Yeah.
such a good way to put it too, because that's exactly what it's like.
Yeah, or something really everyday, like standing at the gas pump doing that mental math. Like, what am I going to do with this month? Like, how am I going to do things this month? And it feels bigger than just this moment. Like it's hitting something older around scarcity.
Ugh. Or if you're someone who just got laid off by this Oracle debacle, and I'm calling them out because that was crap Oracle. Or some of the Amazon layoffs that happened earlier, later last year, early this year, or one of the other big layoffs that have happened in the last few months, because there's been a lot, whether it's been by email, by notification, hell, by you find out via social media that these are coming and there's denial, but it's not quite a denial. And it's industry-wide restructuring. But it's not landing that way. It's landing somewhere for all of us that's so much more personal because it's landing on top of what we have perceived or believed about ourselves and our own value.
Hmm.
And yeah. So really, there were two things that happened this week that I'm going to pick on a little harder. And on the surface, they have zero to do anything with each other, but they really share a similar story, which I think is interesting. So
Oh, yeah.
Artemis II, four astronauts. Amazing. 250,000 miles plus around the moon, which is the pictures, and we love the moon, and it's so beautiful to look at our little blue marble from space. And the emotional moment of this whole thing was watching astronauts cry as they're celebrating something that wasn't had nothing to do with technology or this miraculous trip around the moon. It was when the crew revealed that they've named a crater after the commander's wife, Commander Wiseman's wife. She had died of cancer, and here they are in tears in space, and they're sharing this incredibly profound moment, which it was the most profound moment I think of the whole trip.
Yeah, they went to the farthest point any human has ever traveled,
Hmm.
and they brought their grief with them. It didn't stay behind on the launch pad, but that crater is on the moon now.
Yeah. And that's not a breakdown, right? That's not a failure to heal. I mean, that was taking the wound, like we're talking about. It's
Hmm.
taking that wound with you into that next moment and saying, okay, how can I use this as part of my new beginning? So they took this monumental occasion of going around the moon and celebrated what was one of the biggest tragedies potentially in the commander's life that we know about. And carry that love and loss all and brought it into that new beginning. And I think that's just so amazing.
Yeah, so it's a lot to say that everybody has baggage, everybody carries their history with them, good, bad, grief, and like all of that. Just, it stays with us. And we were talking about the Oracle layoff, and
Yes, thank you. Because I know I'd noted that's the other one I wanted to talk about. So thank you.
yeah, and 30,000 people by a really harsh email. And, just recently, Amazon had eliminated 16,000 corporate, something like that. And that was earlier in this year, although, folks, there's rumored to be more coming at the end of this month or the next month. And the reason cited almost every time is AI. Like, we're restructuring for the future.
Yeah. And for a lot of people, that landed as a fact about their job. I mean, that's impacted a lot of people. And but it's living in their bodies as something that's much, much older. It's like what you were talking about with your story earlier. Who am I if this role doesn't exist anymore? Was
Yeah.
I was I ever actually valuable, right? Or was I useful? Or was I a tool? Was I a number? This isn't just a career question because this becomes a really big identity wound that I think people need to dig into.
Yeah. One story is humanity at its most expansive. The other is the humanity feeling its most replaceable. And both of them are really kind of doing the same thing, surfacing the wound inside the new beginning. Like the
Yes.
astronauts didn't choose to feel grief at the moon, and the people who got the email didn't choose to feel like they weren't enough. The wound just arrives, like it finds its opening.
Yeah. And it's of course the astrology for this week, and we're going to jump into that next, totally gets into this
Mhm.
because that was a really good way to tie those two together because they both create wounds in some way, but they're both opening doors in a different way. Right? So what are you
Right.
doing with that wound and with that information and taking it forward? So I'm going to keep each because each of these planets there's a whole lot going on, but this is a very short version this week. Especially because there's a lot that don't follow closely on astrology, but it's genuinely relevant right now to everything we've been talking about. Because right now we have an unusual number of planets that are all stacked in Aries, that same sign. We refer to it as a stellium, and there will be more by the end of the week. But the sign Aries is that sign of identity, the initiation, the self, the whole I am, right? I begin energy. It's the beginning of our astrological chart. It's that first sign in the wheel. So when you get that many planets and their coverage in that one place this week, it's urgently pushing you to start something but simultaneously bringing up everything that makes you question whether you can with some of these other placements, like with Chiron this week as well.
Yeah, the drive and the doubt all arriving together.
Exactly. Because there's also, I'd mentioned briefly that new moon in Aries. So the moon will be in Aries by the time it's conjuncting Chiron. Chiron is the part of the chart that represents really our oldest, most persistent wound around our identity. So the beginning energy and that identity are literally sitting on top of each other at that point. That's not a coincidence. It's the
Right.
sky totally handing you very specific information and an invitation. Begin and pay attention to what surfaces when you do, because that's the work. And if you want to go into a whole lot more of this from the astrological lens, the astrology podcast, our astrological insights, will be out later tomorrow. But for today, just know that this is enough. Something in the sky is going to totally be creating these conditions where that wound and the new beginning arrive at the same time. You are not imagining it because we're coming off of a very emotional last few weeks. And and this week, this is what that energy is going to feel like. So hang
Yeah, I think
on.
it's going to be crazy. Like we talk about astrology, and for those of you who maybe here for more like intuitive, immersive spirit, like non-astrology stuff, it really does provide the energy of how things can unfold. Like it's not predicting anything, and we're not saying that this is what's going to happen. It's just as you move through the week, this might be how your energy kind of piques your interest, and you can look back at this episode and be like, it explains a lot with all of this stuff, that Stephanie just went through, and this is happening in Aries, and there's things that are just going to be corresponding. So think of that as you move into this next week about what that might look like.
It's funny you say that. And that's really a good way to put it because astrology, Stephen Forrest, who is an astrologer, very well recognized and highly regarded, but he'd made a comment in an article recently that I was reading, and it's around for those that don't believe in astrology, and for those that have it for those that don't believe in astrology. And I'm very trying to summarize this. The nutshell of it was for those that don't believe, they've never actually looked at a chart. They've never actually looked at the date. They've never looked at their own chart or any of that because anyone who has, once you do, there's no going back. You look at it and go, okay, the
It just
stars,
makes sense.
it just makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a map, it's a forecast, it's a tool. Um, but it's spot on. And it's not predictive. It's, I mean, in terms of that way of, right, that it's set in stone. And I think that's just a really good point to bring up.
I think a really good word that you used just there was forecast because when you leave in the morning, I remember when we were little kids, we used to watch the news with our parents and we'd determine the weather for the day. And when you leave and you hear it's going to rain, you might take an umbrella with you. That's not saying it's going to rain, it's saying there's a possibility that it's going to rain. So you prepare
Exactly.
yourself for the energy of that forecast.
Exactly. And the thing is, the you have the ability to change, and it's your fate, right? No one self-determines. No, nothing is set in stone. You have the absolute power to alter your path. What this is doing is saying, here's the energy. And this is from thousands of years of documented energies and histories and the things that have happened in that exact same placement of the stars in that moment and that so on and so forth. And you just go, uh-huh. It's pretty easy to see the math. So anyway,
Right.
but I do want to share something because I think it kind of connects all of this as well. I mean, beyond the astrology, but this wounded part of it for me personally. So a few years ago, when we were opening immersive spirit and I was stepping more into this role, I kept hitting a wall that I just really couldn't explain. And it's not that I never believed in what we were building, because I always have believed in everything that we've done for immersive spirit. I get very excited, but then every time I'd get into a bigger step, I'd like pull back from it a little bit, right? I would find myself, I don't want to say losing motivation, but I would question myself, or I would question, do I know? Is it this? Is it that? And I'd look at what somebody else was doing and immediately set myself up like, oh, I'm not ready. I'm totally not ready for this. And I remember finally, sitting and really talking honestly with Natalie about it. And the block wasn't about the work. It was about a much older story for me. And I'm sure that, sorry, puppy's right here too, that there's others that are going to really resonate with this. But I just needed to see myself in a different way, because
Mhm.
that wound had been around, and I needed to understand that everything I was bringing with me was a part of that, and was a part of even the imposter syndrome and the other pieces that come with opening your own business, starting a new job, whatever it might be, right? Taking on new whatever it is that you're
Right.
facing this feeling about. It's for me, it was all about, okay, I need to just bring it with me because other people are going through this too. So
Yeah. It wasn't a strategy problem. It was more of an identity wound, right?
yes, yes, absolutely, completely. And it's what I see in every single one of the stories we've talked about for ourselves and in the world, all the things that are
Yeah.
happening in the world, because the wound itself is not the enemy. In some strange way, it's an invitation, because you can't do the work or moving forward, or you can't see what the joy is if you don't have a wound or something behind it to heal from, right?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I always remember that statement that something new only begins at something else's ending.
Right?
And like from the day you're born, because their pregnancy is ending, your life is beginning. Like everything you do is because of something else is ending.
That's a great way to look at it. And it's true. It's
Yeah,
true.
it is true. That's true.
Because you get married, you get divorced, you have children, children leave home. I mean, it's all very cyclical, and it all seems very normal because of the programming that we have and the expectations that we have.
Right.
But yeah, every ending has a great new beginning possible.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, and we only have capacity for so much. So,
There's that too.
right? So let's bring this into the soul pillars for a moment because I
Yes.
think this is where it gets kind of practical and personal. So where is this pattern showing up for you right now? I'm going to take on the mind right away because
Okay.
this is where the wound announces itself first, like in your thoughts. Like Stephanie was just talking about in her personal story. It's that self-doubt that arrives with the excitement. that mental list of reasons that something won't work, assembled before you started. That wound is there before you even took a breath. And if you're someone who's just lost a job, and I'm really sorry if that's true, the mind might not be writing a story about your worth and that may or may, it has nothing to do with your layoff. Your worth has nothing to do with your layoff and everything to do with something older, the wound that travels with you, your programming. I don't know if I want to call it like I call it a wound just because wounds stay with us, right? That doesn't
Right.
necessarily mean that you're beaten up or that anyway.
Right.
But
And it's
know
that
this,
Chiron energy, right? We're talking about that wounded healer and the energies of Chiron. So it's relative to this, but it's a pattern. It's something you have felt that felt like a wound or hurtful in some way.
right? Right. And this week, I think it's really important with this kind of energy around us and all of this happening. Notice what the mind is narrating. It's not necessarily telling you the truth about right now.
So agree. That's
Yeah.
perfect. So I'll dig into the heart because this week has really specific emotional texture because it's not dramatic grief. It's that quiet ache of, God, I thought we were past this, right? I thought this was done. And for those watching the news, I thought we were further along than this. I mean, God, really? For those experiencing all the professional upheaval, I thought I had more stability. I thought I had more time. So, thought of those for thinking about like new beginnings. I thought I'd healed more. And I mean, the shadow work, sorry, there it is. But that's real here. And so it's ongoing, it's a continual thing. And that's all part of that healing. So when you have those things pop up with you again, that's a great heart opportunity for you because you
Absolutely.
need to let yourself feel that without letting it become a foregone conclusion for you.
That is super important. So let's jump into the body. If you have felt tired this week in a way that's not about sleep, and you know what I'm talking about, if that's you,
Hmm.
or you're tense in your shoulders or your jaw or your gut, that's the energy landing in your nervous system. So the collective is kind of processing a lot right now, and your body is part of that conversation. So pay attention to where you're bracing because that bracing is going to be information for you.
That's really good. And that has a lot to do with that Mars conjuncting Saturn because it's being physical. And so that totally makes sense. And like I said, pick up the other podcast tomorrow because I talk about it a lot more. But here's what I believe is true about this week, really spiritually, as we wrap up our soul pillars. The new moon in Aries conjunct Chiron is one of the most potent new beginning energies of the year. And by new beginning, I mean at the new moon, right? You get that intentions and the new start, new sensations and start. And that's when Chiron's going to be conjuncting that new moon. And that's specifically because it carries that wound. The wound isn't showing up here as an obstacle for you. The wound is showing up in the doorway because you can't move through and get through that doorway without acknowledging what's there. It's that giant elephant in the room, right? So, what's asking to be seen in you right now? And that's the question I'm going to keep coming back to is just what's asking to be seen.
Yeah, all very good stuff. So you guys pick up our soul pillars, but move through those things and really dig in. And we want to leave you with something to sit with. So these questions work whether you're dealing with a personal new beginning or you're trying to process what's happening in the collective right now because there is so much.
Hmm.
Yeah. So the first one is what am I beginning right now or wanting to begin that feels exciting, but maybe it also feels fragile? And then question two, what's the worst thing I am secretly expecting to happen? Follow that thought back.
Mm.
Where did you first learn to expect that outcome?
I love that. That is that whole where's the other shoe?
Yeah.
God. All right. Question three. What version of me, and as you're saying this to yourself, what version of me keeps showing up uninvited when I try
Mm.
to start this thing? And what does he or she believe about me?
Ooh, that one's deep.
Right?
That is. Yeah.
What version of me keeps showing up uninvited? And then kick them out. But all right, question 4. What would it look like to go forward anyway? Not after the wound heals, but bringing that wound alongside you. So the astronauts didn't wait until the grief was gone, right? He still had grief he carried with him. They named a crater and they went for it. It was a great reminder that we don't start fresh by erasing what has happened or ignoring what has happened to us or for us. We start by recognizing that what happened didn't break us. It's still narrating, it's still the story, it's still part of our story. And ultimately, we get to decide how much authority that wound has in our lives.
I genuinely needed this episode this week. The world felt like a lot, and this just makes sense. So I hope it makes sense for you too, listener.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I mean, yes, the astrology for us is a lot of it because it makes sense in how it all pulls together. But just the craziness of the world, just talking through it to remind ourselves that everybody has wounds. Everybody has runes or
Hmm.
wounds. Huh? Everybody has runes.
You could
Everybody
have
should have
runes,
runes. They're fun,
right?
but right? That's another story. But yes, everybody's got these wounds they carry with, and what are you doing with those, right? Because this gives you a frame this week for everything you're already feeling, and that it's not random chaos. It's the story right now that we're all feeling. It's the story in the sky, and it's all about these beginnings. It's all about the intensity. It's about the cost of absorbing everything, the cost of assertion, and what we're actually ultimately going to carry into that next chapter, the doorway that we're going through. So use that story.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like
I know I rambled a little
I
bit,
love
but
how our podcasts unfold. It's just I feel better after we have a
me
conversation.
too. Me too.
All right. So if today's episode landed for you, no, well, maybe pun intended, I don't know.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, share it with someone who's maybe in a new beginning right now, or someone who is processing one of the stories that are happening in the collective, someone who needs to hear this and knows that that wound coming along doesn't mean that they're not ready for that next step.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. And if you want to understand more, make sure to grab our free soul map kit, right? You can head to immersivespirit.com/soul pillars. Free, 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 free. So grab those and start working with that because that can really, really help at least settle your mind or at least give you an opportunity because they are tools. We come from a very corporate, very technical background, so we like to write things down. We like the list. We like something that's tangible where we can see it and make progress. So those are things that we give to you. We want to make sure that you're able to do that as well. And then make sure that you're hitting the astrological insights, that you're also visiting More Than We See, which is our other podcast that Natalie does. And it's awesome, right? Because it gets into some of these other topics in a deeper level as well. And of course, join us on immersivespirit.com. We would love to just have you subscribe to not only our YouTube channel, but to our website so that we're keeping you up to date on all the latest and greatest from Immersive Spirit, including the astrological updates of the week ahead and events that we have coming up and so much more. So follow us, share, subscribe,
Come
all the
hang out with
goodies.
us.
Come
Yeah.
hang out with us. Come join our community. We'd love to see you there. So until next week, I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Natalie.
And from high heels to happy feels, and from immersive spirit, have an amazing week ahead. We'll see you next week.